Thanks for stopping by today to check out one of my videos. I appreciate it. So today I'm going to be using ChatGPT and VS Code and a few other tools to make a game like tic-tac-toe with the AI. So I use ChatGPT for JavaScript, and HTML will be the first version that it creates. Then I'll have it convert it to a React app. And I'll also use drag and drop, which is a really great way to publish the application to Netlify. So we'll see how the ChatGPT creates the code, how I tell it to tweak it, and then when we're done, I will go ahead and publish it. So let's go ahead and jump into the video. On the left side of the screen, we have the ChatGPT open with GPT-4 selected, and I already ran through this just so that we wouldn't have any interruptions, because ChatGPT sometimes can have some performance issues and it slows things down. So I've already gone ahead and done this, and I will just be scrolling through the ChatGPT code on the left, and then on the right side is my Windows sandbox where I have the code up and running and available to do the demo. And as far as what's installed on the Windows sandbox, I have the VS Code editor installed, and I have the Node application installed, and also the Create React app, which is what I used to create the React version, and then use the ChatGPT code to modify it slightly. So let's go ahead and take a look here on the left side, and I will zoom in just a little bit more. So I asked ChatGPT to go ahead and create a JavaScript, HTML, and CSS for me so I can publish a tic-tac-toe game to Netlify.com. And it went on to go ahead and create the code, and it said here is the HTML code, and I went ahead and copied that over here on the right so you can see what that code looks like. And if we scroll down a little bit more, here is the style, the CSS styling, and it created a file for that, and you can click to copy the code, and that is here in style.css. And if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see the JavaScript. This is the logic for the game that it created. So it created a function called make move and update the board, and also check for the winner. There's a for loop there, and a reset game. And it did explain briefly how to publish to Netlify, but we'll go into that at the end of the video. Let's go ahead and run this now. So if I right click, I also installed a extension called Live Server. If you click on this extensions and just type in Live Server, it has like 41 million downloads. So if I right click on this and say open with Live Server, it will go ahead and pull up the working application. So this is basically what it created. Let's just go ahead and click on. So player X wins, and then you can reset the game. And if it's a draw, it tells you that, and then you can reset the game. So it made a working tic-tac-toe game in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, which is really cool. And let's go ahead and then keep scrolling here to see what I asked it to do next. It told us, yes, that'll give us a basic functional game, and it did give an error, which was because I did not copy all of the code from the script.js file, so in here. And then I asked it what happened or why did the error happen. It made some suggestions, but I went back and looked at the code and saw that I didn't have all of it in here. So I went back to the code that it generated and pasted it back in here and then saved it, and it was fine. So then I asked it to convert the code to use Bootstrap version 4 or 5. And it explains how to go ahead and do that. It talks about the HTML, and here it has a link which I ended up replacing with a different link because it didn't really like that link for Bootstrap. And the rest of the code there for the Bootstrap version. And if we go into my folder here called Bootstrap, we can see I have another file called index. And the title, I called it Scott's Bootstrap Tic-Tac-Toe Game. And you can see here the actual reference. Let's minimize this. There is the Bootstrap reference, and it also, because I asked it for version 4 or 5, it included a link for version 4. I didn't try that, but I would actually find a different URL because I think that may not work properly. But anyway, I'm using Bootstrap 5, and you can see some of the classes that it's using here. And if we keep scrolling here on the left, we can see that it made some CSS adjustments. So if we pull that back up, and down here in the cell hover, Bootstrap is handling most of the layout, so we only had to adjust the cell styling. And then the JavaScript, no changes were needed, so I just copied the file over from the other initial installation or version of the program. So now if I right click on this version and say open with live server, here we can see Scott's Bootstrap Tic-Tac-Toe Game, and I actually had asked it to make a mouse over so it would change the color. That was another change that I asked it to make. And so there we can play and reset the game. It works great. So let's keep going and see what else I asked it here. So yes, add styling. So a mouse over changes the active tile. So then it showed the code for that actually here. The cell hover, slightly darker background on hover. And it's nice how it explains everything. And it even goes on to say this addition will enhance the user experience by providing visual feedback when players move their mouse over different cells on the game board. And it actually ended up having a problem, which I will show if I still have it open. Yes. So it may be a little hard to see, but it actually stacked these. So there were some slight issues with the HTML and CSS that was generated. So it went ahead and generated some different code for us and went on to tell us here each cell is now set to take up 4 columns, so a column -4 within the Bootstrap grid system. And adjusted the CSS. And this is what I mentioned earlier. During the creation of some of these files, it did have an issue with one of the Bootstrap files, so I asked it about it to see, and it gave me a new link to this other URL for the Bootstrap. And in fact, it says here, in this updated code, I've included the official Bootstrap CDN link for Bootstrap 5 and 4, so you can choose either one. So that's how we ended up with these 2 links in here. Then I thought, well, let's have it add something else. go ahead and add the code to automatically reset the game after a user wins, and clicks on OK in the alert box. So let's go ahead and close these other two files and go into this new folder, auto reset on win, and let's go ahead and start that up. So I'll open that with live server, and let's go ahead and play. Click through the tiles. Now it says player X wins, and there you can see it automatically reset, so you don't even have to reset the game. Player O wins and it resets. So that's great. It just took it a few seconds and updated the JavaScript code, updated some of the functionality there. The reset game function resets the board array and sets the current player back to X, ensures game active is true, and updates the board to its initial state. So then I thought, well, let's make another change. And I'll open that up here. I told it to go ahead and create a 48 pixel heading. So let's open this up with live server. And here we can see now game tic-tac-toe. I told it to create it in blue. And let's go ahead and play the game again. Player X wins and it resets. So I asked it here, add a 48 pixel heading at the top of the game in the blue color called game tic-tac-toe. And it went ahead and created the code for me, which basically was adding this H1 with the game tic-tac-toe in between the H1 tags and some CSS styling. And then it also added a CSS entry here, game heading, font size 48, color blue, which is what I asked it to do. So that's really cool. All in all, it just took literally a minute. It took longer for ChatGPT to write all the code than it did to, basically ask it the questions and put this code into the VS Code editor and to get it running. So this is just a good example of using ChatGPT to create a new system. Obviously it can't create everything, but there's a lot it can do. I've used it to write some other programs that are considerably more complex than this, and that does work. It does take quite a lot of prompting sometimes, depending on exactly what you want and what you're trying to get out of it, but it always does seem to work pretty well. So the next thing I did, which I believe was the last thing, was to ask it to create a React application so I can publish it as a static website on Netlify. So we're almost done with the video here. I'm just going to take a look at what I did for setting up this React project. This Windows sandbox that's over here on the right. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I had to install Node.js and create React app. And once I had those installed, I was able to just run this npx command, create React app tic-tac-toe, then change into the directory. I had pulled up a notepad file here, the npm install bootstrap, and then we'll see in the React code how it gets imported. Those are a couple of extra things that I had done. I also asked it to create components in the React. So if we look here in the source, we'll see the files here: cell.js, game.css, and game.js. And also in the public directory, there's index.html, and here is the title, Scott's Tic-Tac-Toe React app. What did it tell us here? create your React components. So the component called game component, game.js, that's this here. This component will manage the game state and render the game board. You can see how it created the React code for us with our import statements, setting up some constants, use state. And if we keep scrolling here, so I copied that code over, then it created the cell.js. This component will represent each cell on the game board. That is found in here, cell.js. There's not a lot of code there, but that's what it wanted us to do. And then game CSS is the styling for it. So of course I just copied that into our game.css. For the cell hover effect, and then the game heading. And then the last thing we did here in this code was to put this code for app.js. So if I go into there, we can see it's the same code here that they suggested. And we can run the code locally if we want to. If we just go down here and do npm start, it will go ahead and start up the code. Also, we'll go ahead and scroll down here, and it mentions building your React app, do npm run build, so we can go ahead and do that now. That won't take very long. It's creating an optimized production build that we're going to use to drag and drop over to Netlify. So here it finished, and it says the build folder is ready to be deployed, and you can also serve it with a static server, which I had installed on this machine before this video. And then you just type in serve-s build, and it runs it here from the build folder as it says here. Let's go ahead and get set up to publish this to Netlify. Let me get that pulled up, and then we'll see how that works. So I've gone ahead and pulled up the Netlify dashboard, and this is where I published it the first time. It's just called Scott's Game, and it was a manual deploy. Now we'll go ahead and say add new site, and we'll see how we can just drag and drop this right into Netlify. Netlify is free, and as I pointed out in one of my videos, you can publish like up to 500 apps depending on what kind they are, for free. So you can get an account, and it's really helpful when you want to experiment with different things. I'll say add new site, deploy manually, and here is drag and drop. Drop a folder with your site's HTML, CSS, and JS files, and they'll give it a link to share. Let's go ahead and open that up. And it wants us to drop the build folder, so let's go ahead and drop that. And it tells us don't refresh. And that was in real time. Now it gave it a new name here. And if I click on open production deploy, so let's go ahead and try it. Player O wins. And we can reset the game. I was able to just simply drag and drop into Netlify, and it did everything it needed to publish the application very quickly, which is really nice. Here I'll go back to my main dashboard, and we can see the two, Scott's Game and then this other news site. I can click on that. If I want to change the configuration of the site, I can click on that. If I want to change the site name, let's call it YouTube Scott's Game, and then hit save. So it saves it, and now you can see up here I can click on it and it immediately takes us to the game. It's a really quick way to give it a name that's not the default name, which of course is impossible to remember what that is. So there you go. We made a game with artificial intelligence. We use ChatGPT 4, which is in a ChatGPT Plus account. We had it create JavaScript for us, HTML and CSS in multiple different versions. Then we had it create or convert it to a React app, and then published it to Netlify with a simple drag and drop. Well, I hope you found this interesting. I thank you for stopping by, and I will talk to you soon in the next video.
If you like this channel, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content.